Omori was not what I expected. I was preparing for a game that was so depressing that it would make you cry throughout the game. Although I never paid attention to the small but dedicated Omori fan base, I was warned somehow that this would be heart-wrenching. So I prepared myself mentally as the day came. Then I started streaming. So at this point, I finished the game. Man, what a journey Omori was. The morning after finishing the game, my mind was not dissecting the story at all, or thinking about how creative the gameplay was, or how terrifying the horror elements in the game were. No, at the end of the story, my heart grew heavy for the characters. I loved them so much, and I pitied them for what they had to go through, but more on that later. Now, let me give you my impressions on my first playthrough of Omori. I want to tell you what I found so compelling and what stood out for me. I'll start with the story, which includes what I think about the characters, then I'll steer you into the gameplay and its creative turn-based fighting. And then afterwards, I'll talk about the game's design. And if you've played Omori, you probably know that it's a 10 out of 10. Now without further ado, let's dive deep into the deep well of my impressions. Alright, let's get this out of the way. I like the story. You start in a barren room with almost nothing to do, then suddenly, you're introduced to a colorful cast of characters, and along with it, a bright and mysterious world full of surreal things, like this huge cat, maybe this cat-shaped hole. Oh my gosh, friends? You meet your friends, know their personalities, and just like a beautiful memory, the whole gang just enjoys their own company. I was having a good time at this peaceful and wholesome game until suddenly, nightmare fuel. Everything gets dark and creepy with Basil. You're forced to insert a knife in your body. Like what happened? Like what happened to all that cottony stuff that we just established for like an hour? It's like Omocat just decided, hey, this is too cutesy. I need to put some horror into it, and then puts it up to a 10. Then even later in the game, you realize there are actually two kinds of stories in Omori. Let me introduce you to the Dream World story. Most of the colorful, expressive, and surreal events you find in the game come from your character's dream world. In this dream world, you are Omori, and your goal is to find Basil, who mysteriously disappeared, and you and your squad search high and low for him in a strange new world. This is Omori's story. However, just like all dreams, they come to an end, and when you wake up, you are not Omori. You are a boy canonically named Sunny. And you learn that you're moving out of your hometown in less than a week. And unlike the grand adventure in the dream world, you don't have a grand mission to complete. Instead of a mysterious place to explore, you revisit the memories of your childhood as you walk around your neighborhood. That familial bond you had in the dream world is completely erased as everyone had separated and carried on with their life. The most surreal and imaginative things you see in your dream world are in reality just based on toys or places that were memorable during your childhood. This is Sunny's story, and his world is quite a downer compared to Omori's dream world. While the two stories are mostly different from each other, I can assure you that both are required to understand the climax of this game. So this is basically the introduction of the game, which was like 3 hours of gameplay. It might seem like I spoiled a lot, but there's just so much more content than what I just told you. Compared to the whole story, this is just surface level information. If you recall earlier, I said I liked the story, however I did find it a bit absurd at times, especially during the horror sequences during the endgame. Being weird and creepy works in games like these, but going overboard with it, that makes me feel like they were just there for the shock value. And there are only a few times that happened. But what stood out for me more wasn't the story itself, it was the characters. Oh my gosh, these characters were just amazing to be around. Since we're still talking about story, let's talk about Mari and Basil first. Mari is Sunny's older sister that is a crucial character in the story. She's portrayed as a perfect character in the dream world, as she hangs out only on the picnic blanket. She is literally everything. She's our save point, our nurse, our filler episode, a girlfriend to Hiro, a sister to Sunny, a role model for everyone, and a force of love to be reckoned with. There's just not much to say about her without spoiling, but she does not at all feel left out in the story. I'll give you that. Now, Basil. Basil. Basil's probably the hardest character for me to describe. He's a timid boy who loves taking photos and taking care of plants. And despite how kind he looks, there's just something mysterious about him, especially when he disappears at the start of the story and him appearing in animated scenes. Finding him is our goal in Omori's story, so he's always an important character, but how important is he? Even to me who finished the game, his role is quite confusing to me. But either way, you'll still enjoy his presence, but to me, his personality and story is the most confusing. But how about the squad? How do they hold up? Well, first is your character, both Sunny and Omori. At first, you would think he's just a silent protagonist in these games with no emotion and are dependent on the characters around you. But no, he's actually surprisingly not any of these. Sunny Omori is a reserved fellow who loves being with his friends, and you can see that throughout the story. The emotions he feels is not just stated in lines of dialogue. The dream world are his emotions. You can see how bright and colorful his friends are all the time. The environment around Omori changes depending on how he's feeling. Like when you go near his fears, you could visually see the darkness trying to get to him. By the time you finish the game, I believe he's the most fleshed out character. Let's talk about Kel next, as there's not a lot to say about him. When you meet him, he fits the trope, headstrong friend that's a bit too headstrong and acts quite dumb at times. But I think that's the best part of him. There's always tension when Kel and Aubrey fight, and he's a good contrast to Omori and Sunny's calm and reserved personality. And you can see how important he is as a character, especially during Sunny's story. In my mind, he is the spirit of the team. But what keeps him intact is his older brother Hiro. He's the most responsible out of the group, acting like the big brother not just to Kel, but to Sunny and Aubrey as well. And if you didn't see the clues, Hiro is also Mari's love interest, and both are often seen flirting in Omori's world. I would consider him as the glue that keeps the team together. But last but definitely not least of the squad is Aubrey. To me, she's my favorite character. She shows her girly side when she shows affection to her one-sided crush for Omori, and has a lot of respect for Hiro, but compared to both, Mari is her ideal role model as she's the only other girl in the group and aspires to be as great as her. I like how she's also quite hostile to Kel, especially when they start bantering. Her story in Sunny's world is just amazing for her character development, and it completely shows how much she loves this group. To me, she is the heart of the group. Overall, all these 6 characters definitely made the story a lot more fun and emotional. When I finished the game, I really felt like I was part of the group, and I felt joy when they were just having fun or miserable when they're trying to get through a tough time. The story was great, but it was the characters that made the journey fun and memorable. Now, what of its gameplay? Does it mesh well with the story? Well, Omori is a single-player turn-based RPG game, which I believe is perfect for the narrative and gameplay. What was surprising to me was that it had many elements of a stereotypical JRPG in terms of gameplay. There was a leveling system, new skills, a health and mana pool called the Hearts and Juice respectively, stronger stats on found weapons, side quests, mini bosses and bosses, and many more. Anyway, I love the gameplay because I love RPGs, even though I don't play them all the time. It's like most adventure games, you get to explore, find treasure, meet cool NPCs, and of course, fight enemies. Thinking about it, Omori's gameplay is about the same as other RPGs actually. But what separates it from the others is its emotion gimmick. While in battle, your character can experience different kinds of emotions, which can both aid and hinder you while fighting. There's happiness, which increases your chances of critical hit, but your chances to miss your attack also increases. When you're angry, you deal lots more damage, but your recklessness will also increase the damage you take from hits. When you're sad, you become much more defensive, but it makes you cry, which in the game makes you lose some juice. Lastly, neutral has no benefits for you, but also no weaknesses that hinder you. These emotions can stack on each other, and their benefits and hindrances also escalate. And just like stone, paper, scissors, happy is good against angry, angry is good against sad, and sad is good against happy. It might seem too much information at first, but I can assure you it is quite simple. Another combat exclusive feature are follow-up moves that you can use after attacking. These follow-up moves are quite handy during fights when you want to deal extra damage, heal an ally, or force an emotion out of an ally. They also have some cute text that comes with them, as Omori, Aubrey, Kel, and Hiro try to fight as a team. Overall, the gameplay is fun, especially if you love RPGs. There are many options on how to engage in combat that it doesn't feel stale at all. The only gripe I had with the combat in this game was when I was totally helpless during the horror sequences. I just didn't like it when I'm stuck pressing a single option until that portion of the game was finished. And when you decide to treat these horrific amalgamations as something of an annoyance, they aren't that scary to me anymore. But besides that, this game is filled with different and creative options to fight enemies with a lot of places to explore, so the nitpick doesn't bring the experience down that much. Obviously, the design of this game is 10 out of 10. Look at this unique art style. When the game wants to look cute with its art, it looks hella cute. The human characters? Cute. Mini bosses and bosses? Very cool. All the terrifying monsters you see? Terribly disturbing. The art style really amplifies both the beauty and the horrors of this game, and in return, it lets you be immersed in both the dream world and the real world. But don't let the pretty drawings distract you from the pixel art. The pixel art does an amazing job complementing all the drawings. All the colors used for the dream world made it so pretty and made each section of the game stand out. Even some of the horror sequences make use of the bright colors to let you really feel isolated and alone. Another amazing thing about the pixel art is that I could see the details put into areas even when it's so dark. I hate it when a game becomes too dark and you can't even see a damn thing. Even when there's a light in front of you, oh my gosh, I hate those kinds of games. The pixelated graphics removed that concern for me, as you could see what is coming right at you, which makes it much creepier. Overall, both the stylized drawings and the pixel art in this game complement each other so well and really amplifies the story with its visuals. There was never a time that anything looked out of place, or I would have preferred one over the other. What I thought this game would be was a depressing game from start to finish. And back then I was ready to really take on this topic on stream. However, I admit, all the mental preparation I had was swept away after playing its first few hours. And at the end, I learned that to understand how depressing this game is, you'll need context to why it's so sad to begin with. And after hours of getting attached to these characters, the world, its pretty designs, and just having loads of fun, I realized that I love this world. And that's where it all went wrong. I fell in love with this world, and in return, the game made me fall into a sadness as the story continued to be unfolded. There are so many reasons to play Omori. Oh, more reasons that I could ever tell you. So I'd like you to experience it for yourself. Because damn, it really was heart-wrenching. And I wouldn't want it any other way. Goodbye.